We are being filmed on ICAM this evening. For those who were not able to make it, it'll be shown at some point in the so that folks will be able to see the presentation going forward. This is the first of 2 evenings that we have scheduled. We have one tonight to view this building and hear from teachers, and then we're going to do a similar presentation at the Doyon School on April 23rd, where we'll be able to tour that building and then have a presentation as well. It'll be a similar presentation in both places. The purpose of our evening tonight is not necessarily to get into the weeds of the project itself, but I wanted to provide an opportunity for folks in the community to hear from our teachers about the current teaching space that we're in and what the opportunities would be if a new building were to pass in May, and how that would change how we're doing business. We hope to not necessarily get into debates about different things. It's more informational. Please feel free to ask questions. If it's a question that isn't necessarily germane to the conversation tonight, but or that I can't answer, we're going to put it in the parking lot. If there are questions that we don't get to, or you have questions that come to mind afterward, we have markers over on the sideboard there that you can fill out on there, just lingering questions, so that we're able to answer any of your questions going forward. Because we really want folks to have accurate, up-to-date information as we move forward. So we have a slideshow running through on a loop. It's not necessarily going to coincide with every commentary that's made by the teachers or the administrators, but it's just some pictures of different conditions that we have in the building. This wasn't planted, but we were standing here before, and somebody said, "There's a wet spot on the floor over there." And I looked up, and sure enough, there's a leak here that's dripping into the bucket on occasion. So, was not planted. Matter of fact, you said that it hasn't leaked before there, but it's a new leak, so who knows. So with that, we don't really have necessarily opening comments, but you have an agenda in front of you this evening on the blue sheet, and we just have teachers from both schools, because we're all in it together, who are just going to talk about their teaching space. Okay, so I'm going to step to the side, and I'm not sure who wants to kick things off. I'm going to get out of the way.
Want to just introduce ourselves?
Yeah, please introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
My name is Alyssa Brand, and I'm a special educator at Doyon. Andrea Welch, first grade at Doyon.
I'm Maureen O'Connell, math at Doyon.
Kathleen O'Reilly, I teach 5th grade here at Winthrop.
Catherine Morris, I'm a special education teacher here at Winthrop.
Sheila McAdams, principal here at Winthrop.
Sheila Howard, principal at Doyon. Lisa Plants, I teach pre-K to 3rd grade music at Doyon.
Amy Gregory, I teach 5th grade at Doyon.
Anthony Falconeri, I'm a special education teacher here at Winthrop.
And I'm Susan Stevens, I teach 2nd grade at Doyon. Do you want to start with the co-teaching?
Sure. So I think you have seen some of the co-teaching rooms. And in my group, we talked a lot about the benefits of having 2 equally qualified educators teaching together and sharing a space. It allows us to really meet the needs of all of our learners. We find some space constraints because we want to pull a lot of small groups, and so have the need for several tables and storage for materials. So we do feel like it's a model we are committed to and see incredible value in, and would love to have a little more space or use our space more wisely to kind of keep with that current trend in education.
I think it's important to have space that's flexible as well for different types of groupings and different types of needs. If you want to pull that small group, that you have a space that's not just out in the hall, but it's respectful of the students and the teachers and the space that they need to do the work that they need to do. But flexible enough to, when we want to have that whole group, we do that, but when we want to have several small groups or rotating activities going on, then we have space that fits our needs for that.
I think within co-teaching, one of the largest benefits is that those students who are identified and receive specific services can receive those services within the classroom. So that way they benefit from continuing their education along with their peers, the same curriculum, but they receive the supports that they need. With that being said, again, flexible grouping would be very beneficial, but also there are still those students that do benefit from being pulled out of the classroom and having that truly focused one-on-one instruction. And again, finding that space within the school can be difficult to find a quiet, focused space that allows them to do their best work and to make the most progress possible.
That's a question. Yeah. Is every class going to be co-taught? Is that like what we're going for?
I think it's based on the population. We don't need, we don't have every classroom co-taught here. I think we have 5 or 6 co-taught classrooms because of the need of a certain grade of students. So some grade levels don't have co-teaching classrooms and some have 2. It just depends on the need and it fluctuates from year to year. But, it's a model that we really see a tremendous benefit to. Lowering that student-to-teacher ratio alone, to have 2 equally qualified educators with different levels and experiences, levels of experience and backgrounds in education, it's really a best-case scenario for us to meet everybody's specific needs.
Melissa, do you mind talking a little more about special ed and kind of service delivery, other service delivery models?
Yes. So I actually co-teach in a 4th grade classroom at Doyon, but we basically, depending on each group of kids in each grade level, have co-taught in just particular subject areas or small group pullouts. And one thing we struggle with is finding appropriate spaces to have those small groups and making sure that different populations of students are adequately served. So students who might need kind of a place because they're anxious or need a quiet space have that, and for students who need specific instruction they have that, and for students who can receive the instruction in the classroom in a co-taught setting, that the classroom would be big enough to provide that. So we really do our best at co-teaching, but it's definitely cramped. To have all the student desks and materials and also have those spaces where we can each meet with students.
So I'll just say that, at an elementary, supervision of students is not a given. That's a requirement for us. And the primary grades are a little different than the intermediate grades. And Andrea, if you want to speak a little bit, you and Sue, about those needs at the primary level?
About supervision?
Not just the different needs you would have at a primary that then Amy will speak to from an intermediate that might be a little different.
So you have?
One of the pieces I immediately think of is that it's very active and hands-on, a lot of small group service, and so finding space is definitely a consideration when you're trying to have 3 or 4 different small groups that are all working simultaneously. So flexible spacing is something that I think is really important. And with space and doing so many hands-on activities, there's also a storage component to where does everything get stored. In my classroom, it's like if you open the doors to my closet, it's a little booby trap because I'm trying to put so much stuff, particularly science equipment, into the closet. So storage for primary grades, and I think probably for all grade levels, is something we really struggle with.
As far as just having the ability to have small groups And with especially like the older grades, if you have some independent work that needs to happen, or you might have a small group, it's okay to maybe have them in the hall for a short period of time where they're not supervised. In the primary grades, we just can't do that. We need to have everybody within our site at all times, just for their safety, and because they're learning so much about how to be a student that we can't really let them have that independence outside the classroom. So we need to have spaces that are sufficient for us to allow them to have independence, but supervised independence within the classroom. And the spaces that we have now really don't allow for that as much.
So I can segue over to the upper elementary with that, allowing them to be able to work a little more independently out in the hallway. The challenges in the hallway, it's just space. They're narrow enough as they are at Joyon, and we now have the opportunity of having all this great technology on carts, but we have these carts that are running every other classroom need to be plugged in with iPads or Chromebooks. So, you know, there's that space. We also asked to have all of the students' boots, jackets, backpacks, all put out into the hallway so we could gain storage in the closets. So for about 10 years, I couldn't shut my closet doors. You know how it is at night when you go to bed and you don't want to have the closet door open? That was my every day. So it was great, we got that out in the hallway. But now, students can't really work out in the hallway. And if they are, you know, continuously, I'll hear a teacher say, feet in, here we come. You know, only one class can pass at a time, and it's noisy. You know, I had students that were trying to film a short audio clip. They walked around the whole entire building to try to find a quiet spot in the hallway. They came back and this is great, we no lock. I said, okay, how about lunch? And they wanted to do it. They used their recess time to do it because it was not a quiet spot in the school, out in the hallway. The classroom was active. You know, those are just the hallway struggles. But I think, you know, the small grouping that you talk about, we do a lot with literature circles. You know, we're looking for students to share their thinking, share their learning with each other, and they have prompts and they're working, and myself will go from group to group. Having 5 groups in the square footage we have at Joyon for a classroom, I try to split them up at all corners, and they're still, I can't concentrate. I can hear that group, you know, what should we do? And so we've talked about whisper voices, and, you know, myself and other teachers in the classroom to really work on that so that these groups can, you know, have conversations. We know how that is as adults, it's challenging, and we're really trying to push them in their learning.
When Amy says that about Joyon, remember the Joyon classes are even a little larger than the Winthrop classrooms that you just went through. So not by much, but
right.
The Winthrop classrooms here are even smaller. So it's the same struggles in both buildings as far as that.
One thing I think of is, you know, we do have more square footage, we just don't have the right square footage. You know, it's just the setup makes it so challenging.
Sheila, did you mean the number of students is more at Joyon, or the actual
The
physical?
square footage of the classrooms that currently at Joyon are not by much, a couple of feet. But I'm saying, if you've never been in both schools, in the audience here, it's good for you to know that the square footage. So when Amy talks about square footage, the Winthrop classrooms are even a little smaller. The new classrooms are 1,100 square foot. So, you know, they're that much bigger for everyone.
And there are currently more students at Joyon than Winthrop, about 20, 25. That flexes different years, but right now they're around less. Yeah.
Dan, you had a question?
Well, 1,100 square feet for a classroom?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure that I grew up in a 1,200 square foot house, so.
Pepper, did you have a question?
So there's I know Joyon is like 930 by 30 on the blueprints. And you said they're like 850 in Winthrop, more or less? Or what was that number you just quoted, Dan? I mean, what's a typical square footage?
Square footage here.
Square footage here is just about 9.
Just kind of 864.
864, sorry.
Is there
a standard in the state for what an elementary school classroom has to be per square footage? What does the state require? There's got to be a minimum, right?
Minimum, I believe, is close to 1,000 square feet now.
Not correct.
Close to. Do you have an exact number?
I can read the regulations if you'd like.
I don't have the
The
regulations.
acceptable classroom standards for the MSBA for new construction are between 900 and 1,000 square feet. We're proposing on the high end of that.
Okay.
But they do waive that for school systems that choose to renovate or add and renovate. And they give extra points to this extra percentage matching funds for schools that choose to do that. Because they're saving the building.
What's important, Carl, is that I think the reason they went larger in the new building design was the co-teaching that they were talking about. So they split some of that space up that they would have had for special education space because we have two teachers in the classroom. So that's why that number is higher.
So I just want to answer that question correctly. There are 1,100 square feet because of the co-teaching, as Sheila said. Sorry to block your view, gentlemen. This purple area is the area that's allotted to the co-teacher. So that we're allowed to have a little bigger classroom at 1,100 square feet because of our co-teaching model. And that's the purple stripe that you see in each classroom is the co-teaching square footage allowed by the MSBA.
They've taken some of the special education space and added it to individual classrooms.
The other purple is all the other special education space. Tonight you saw the special education therapy room. The purple rooms in the new area are the special education spaces. So they're
spread out throughout the building as well.
So we want to speak a little bit about, you keep hearing about pull-out and the services today are quite extensive. And Maureen O'Connell will speak a little bit to some of the services that happen in addition to special ed.
Exactly. Thank you. I spent the first good portion of my time at Doyon in 2nd and 3rd grade, and for the past 3 years I've been doing math intervention, which I love. And the interesting thing is, in this newer model with extra space, if you can imagine, some kids who are not going to ever have a special education plan, they don't need a totally separate kind of service, they just need maybe a little boost in an area from time to time. We'll have what some people would call it intervention or response to intervention. It's like it's part of regular education, but it's just good teaching. It's making sure that if there's a gap in somebody's understanding, that we fill it in and give them that solid foundation before we ask them to start building their whole educational career. So right now, some of the things that I'll work with students are louder and different from what's going on in the math lesson at the time. And we have to come all the way down the hall and into a little corner space that I use. And ideally, in the best world, I would be in one of these purple areas with a table and be able to have kids fluidly coming back and forth so that we're not using that time leaving, walking down, from 1st grade at the back of Doyon School all the way up to the front. It just would be much more fluid, and I could be another adult who's helping everybody instead of, just maybe a few targeted students. So I think that the math professionals here at Winthrop also suffer from storage and space problems because we have to have a lot of tricks in our bag to look at things from every grade in different ways, and the stuff just needs a place to go. I'm not really proud of my shelves right now, but I think storage space and then flexible space to meet with students would be the biggest thing that I would be excited about in the new building.
And I'll just add to that, the interventionists also act as the resources for the rest of the building. So that's why they have so much stuff, because they need the range of the grade levels, but they also are the go-to place for a lot of the teachers in the building if they have questions or other concerns. So they need to be well-resourced week, right?
Okay, so I'm the physical education teacher. I'm one of 2 teachers here. So we typically, on most days in the morning, we have 2 PE classes going on at a time. We got 1 class in here, and we have 1 class in the gym that you saw. And if you look around, there's a little more than between 20, almost 30 in this room. I get 24 children to jump rope in that gym at one time, and that means you don't move from your area or a jump rope. So I navigate it very easy. I get hit 3 or 4 times in class, but when all of you probably went to school, played some dodgeball, you played some kickball, you sat down for about 15 minutes, watched someone do something. In physical education today, it's all based on skills. We don't do a lot of modified games until they get older. So every child is moving 45 minutes at a time. I hopefully try not to talk a lot at all, but in this space is bigger than our gym space. And take all of these tables that are against the wall, and when you leave today, I want you just to like shuffle your feet on the floor. Kids are running full speed from here to there, and they have to stop. I don't know why they kind of like it. They like to slide, but it is a little bit of a safety concern. When we're outside, we do get to take advantage of outside, but a motorcycle or a nice Corvette goes by, I can no longer have attention to anything going on. And if we're outside the soccer field, we have recess going on. The children are pretty good. The 5th graders will hang out away from me, but it's distractions that are going along. And we make do, but the bigger space would provide more ample space to provide greater success. So think about playing basketball in that gym. You're shooting, and then you're bobblehead. You're looking for where that ball's going to hit you in the head. So just some children that shy away from the ball, that greater space would just be a huge anxiety reducer for them.
And Anthony had the opportunity to work at Winthrop and at Joy. When he first came, he was the split person, and it's really nice that Anthony and the 2 other phys ed teachers work so closely with their curriculum, and to be together in the same building to do that and all the work that they do. Sometimes we think about that as the classroom teachers, Winthrop and Joy, who do a lot of curriculum work together. It goes across the specials, and so Anthony, when he speaks about the space here, he's also very aware of the space at Doyard and the limitations and the strength of our phys ed program, where it is different than anything we had when we went to school because of how they work together.
And if you don't get the chance to go to Doyard, no gym has a nice wooden standard floor. I'm not even sure what material that is technically in there. The other gym has more tile like this. And that space at Doyard is double the size that I have here. And even the space at Doyard seems very small for a classroom of 24 children.
And we also have the phys ed is in the cafeteria and in the gym because they can't do it all at the same time.
And just to give you a face on this space right here, so on a typical day, EDP is in here until about 8:30, 8:35, 8:40, when they go to the classrooms. The tables all have to get picked up by the custodian. Then I have to move in here and set up, sometimes 10 minutes to set up. Then at 11:15, when my class ends, there's actually 0 transition period. So we try to do a little debrief on the stage to the custodians try to clean the table out. And then the students come in and go through. And if there's band, the minute lunch is over, all the tables get put up, and the band comes in here with Mr. Fremont Smith.
And that's a nice segue to music.
Thank you. Yes.
All planned, of course.
It was. I'm glad you worked on that. So I've had the benefit of actually teaching in all the buildings. I was between Winthrop and Doyon when I first started. And in addition now to teaching at Doyon, I also teach 7th and 8th grade band in the middle school. So I have the perspective of being in that building and having everything where you need it to be, having a dedicated space where the kids just come, they sit, and we're ready to start playing, as opposed to what happens in the elementary schools. So you mentioned the choral risers are here for 4th and 5th grade chorus, which is the entire 4th grade that comes for chorus, the entire 5th grade. So those have to be set up ahead of time. The piano has to be rolled out, and then when it's done, it all has to be put away. So kind of what you're saying, it's like there's all this lead time that elementary music teachers have to build into their schedule to be prepared to teach. So
you know, if they get bumped if there's an assembly, if there's some special thing that's happening in the picture day. I mean, it's all kinds of things that can bump that schedule, and then they don't have their space for chorus. And it's the same at Doyon. Chorus this year is in the music room, which again, it's, you know, it's a pretty good sized room, but to have an entire grade in one classroom, they're sitting on the floor during chorus. We don't have these kind of risers at Doyon, which you really need, you know, to be able to do chorus the right way and have the kids have the ability to stand up, or they can also sit, you know, for a little bit while they're rehearsing. And I think band and orchestra are even more challenging because you need stuff. I mean, for chorus, the kids come and they sit on the risers and it's done. But for band and for orchestra, you've got to have the chairs, you've got to have the music stands, you've got to have the music that you're going to hand out, and inevitably somebody forgot their music. So if Jamie Fremont left it in the White House and his band isn't here, do you know what I mean? It's like they don't have a home. Marissa at Doyon, she's the string teacher. She teaches in Sheila's office. She teaches in the hallway. And she also teaches in the music classroom. So she is continually, I mean, she just has stuff that she's carrying everywhere. She's showing up early to set up the chairs and stands so that the kids aren't doing that, so it's not impacting instructional time. And it's the same for Jamie Fremont Smith. I mean, you look at the stages cleared now. When he has band in here, he's gonna pull out all these chairs, set them up. He's gonna bring the stands in here, set them all up. And then it's all broken down afterwards. So it's really a challenge for them. You know, and just to be able to have one space that you can go to. You know, imagine having to move your office every day, you know, and all your stuff that you need. There's really no access to technology in here for either the chorus or the band classes. There's no Promethean board. There's not even a whiteboard in here. So even to have to, you know, have stuff that you want to put up and show the kids, you can't do it. It's not available. And it's the same for Marissa at Doyon. And there's a whiteboard in your office now. But when she's in the hallway, she's in the hallway. You know, there's kids coming back and forth from gym and lunch. And again, the kids are pretty good at focusing. But it's a difficult situation at best, and she has nowhere she can like say, oh, let's all look at, you know, these rhythms. There's no whiteboard in the hallway, so it really limits what can be done just because of the physical spaces and the multiple spaces that we're teaching in for mostly, you know, in the elementary schools. It's really a challenge.
So in both of our buildings, we have a lot of wonderful school-wide events, whether last week music showcases, we have authors who come to visit. We have no place to have the entire school population. When we do it, we have it in the cafeteria, and we are at max, and it's, we can't invite parents to come. We have a wonderful sing-along at the holidays. We can't invite parents to come. If we do have the entire school. So we have to oftentimes break it up into the lower grades, upper grades. So that whole feel of having everyone together becomes very difficult because there isn't a space for us to be able to do that at either building.
And I'll just speak to, no matter what you read these days, you see a lot of information about the trauma and the needs that are coming into the schools from the student population. So one of the challenges we have is when these buildings were built, they certainly weren't anticipating that kids had social thinking, or they met with a social worker, or they met with a nurse in a more extended kind of manner. So our social workers in both our buildings, they meet with small groups all day long. And our nurse actually, you know, these are days when medically fragile kids do come to our schools. And so there are times when they need privacy, or they need a little more space, or they have equipment that they need in order to manage throughout the day and within their classrooms. So it is a challenge, I know, for both of those professionals in both buildings to function and find a good way to maintain privacy while also giving the best of service that they're here to give.
We currently have a school psychologist that's in what was a storage closet. Her office is there, where we store chairs because there's no place else store the extra chairs, and the kiln are all in the same location. No one should be able to be in a closet and don't have another space. And it's very sad. I was saying to someone earlier that one of the concerns as you watch the reel of pictures, and Dr. Blake talked about the bucket of water before I came, one of our service master is becoming the local person who comes most often to our school. There are certain people in the community I should know, and then there's people I shouldn't know. And due to the leaks on the roof at Doyon, every day the leak is somewhere different. And because Monday morning you come in and one of the current leaks is in the front office where Amy Digby is, the leaks, she has the buckets where they need to be over the weekend, and then the floor is so saturated. So the amount of money it's costing us to continuously try to fix the roof, and then the leaks, but then when the leaks get too bad, we're now washing those carpets or having to replace those carpets continuously. And when Maureen said earlier about what she would love is the location, she didn't speak about the radiators and the ventilation. And at this point, Maureen has to turn on her ventilation for heat, but when kids come, she shuts it off because now it's warm, but because it's so noisy. And the same thing in Amy Gregory's room, she turns it on, and the kids will say, oh good, if they were doing group work, and it's a noisy type of group work, she can leave the heat on. But if it's when she's talking and they're all needing to listen to each other, she has to turn it on. And that's become progressive in the last 6 or 7 years, that I said to someone, it's like having company over. You come to these schools and when you're filled with children and everyone's happy, the children don't realize there's something different because this is what they're used to. But it's like your company comes, everything looks okay, but we don't talk about the roof or the water or the leaks continuously, but it's happening continuously. The ventilation every day, the compressors, one's down at Doyon now, the other one went down last week, and the teachers didn't realize it got so hot in the room because the second compressor went down. So when the custodian went in, he said, oh my gosh, it's so hot. He had to then go find out, because now you don't know what's cold, what's hot, why is it cold, why is it hot, because they don't know the exact reason. They just know, okay kids, let's put on your coats, or okay kids, let's take off your coats.
In the music room at Doyon, the motor for the heater burnt out in the middle of December. And because it's such an old system, it's hard to find the parts. So he was able to replace the motor, and it worked for a couple days, and then it went out again, and it was another part that had to be ordered. So we sort of kind of haven't had heat since middle December, and it came back about 2 weeks ago. The part finally came in, and it's repaired now, but it was pretty cold in there in January and February. It's really a challenge.
Can you speak a little bit about school safety in terms of sprinklers, smoke detectors, security in the doors so that intruders can't come in?
Yeah. So I'll jump in. Certainly the buildings that we're in are safe. They meet current codes for when they were built. We've kept up with those things. We have the smoke detectors, we have alarm systems, etc. Certainly we keep all of the doors locked. I know this, in this day and age, school security is a major concern. A new building, just like a new car, has different safety features and different amenities, if you will, provide an additional layer of safety. And certainly, without going into great detail, the new building would have a much better system, integrated system for the security, the overall security of the building in terms of all the windows and doors and entry into the facility. The outside design, the landscape design of the property also contributes to the safety of the building. There's been a lot of work done by the landscape architects in terms of plantings and how the building is set up, the outside of the building in terms of how you can get to it with gardens and things like that, so you can't drive right up to the building necessarily. So there's a lot of different features that have been built into the design of the building that will enhance the safety and security overall.
And there sprinkler systems in the buildings? I noticed some of the classrooms here don't.
Yeah, that's great.
No sprinklers, but go ahead.
Certainly the new building, because of today's codes, would have to be fully.
You also don't have generators in these buildings, so when we lost power, before we have generators, but they're not hooked up to our refrigeration. So your refrigeration, we had our lunch ladies driving things over to the high school that is connected to the generator.
This last storm, I was in here moving stuff from here over to the high school.
So the
Had to get moved, otherwise we had just lost it the week before. Everything was just replaced, and we lost power again. So I came in and moved everything over to the high school with a couple of the custodians to make sure that we didn't lose everything yet again. A lot of waste.
I think some of us have a very emotional attachment to one school or the other school. For me, it's Winthrop grandchildren. I did some volunteering here. And if you all would just talk about the fact that when there is a new building, the heart of Winthrop will go with the faculty and your programs and your curriculum to the new building, and the heart of Doyon will go there. So we won't be losing anything except an old building. I mean, that's, because I think Winthrop and my heart goes pit-a-pat, but the truth is, the Winthrop, it's you all, it's not, and the Doyon you all, it's not the building. And I think we need to be reassured that that's all that we will be leaving behind.
I don't think there's any educator that gets into the game and doesn't realize that it's about relationships they need to build. That being said, you will be combining two different buildings and two different ways of doing things, and there will be some changes that will happen, but it will all be changes that are at the heart of educators and what they feel is important. So I can just say that I think what is at the heart of both Doyon and Winthrop is about those relationships, and I think that comes from the educators, as you suggested. I don't think they would be in their job without feeling like they are going to make relationships with kids.
Some of us are going to have a wish come true to work with people from the We have a lot of people. I love my Winthrop colleagues, and I know they love me. We will be a force to be reckoned with together. And I sit listening to us talk about all of the, we're telling you all our troubles, like you don't like to show your dirty laundry. But isn't it incredible the wonderful education we have at these two schools with all of these, it's like we're hobbling with broken legs, but we're doing a great job. Imagine the possibilities of two tremendous faculties joined together in a state-of-the-art facility. I mean, I can picture your children now. They're going to fly. So I feel like, I think there's so much to be excited about. I know it's hard to use. What a beautiful thing you just said, because they talk about that with church, the church is the people. And I love that you said the school is the people, because the children and the teachers and the relationships, we could meet in a tent if that were feasible, but it isn't. We need these spaces. And I think about because I'm old, when I first started, there was a lot of paper, a lot of passing out paper, skinny little books, notebooks. It isn't like that anymore. You don't want your kids to learn that way. You want them to have their hands doing, actively learning, and that takes stuff. Like I'm thinking about in Miss Speak's second grade, taking out the Lego robotics and doing the projects, and you have a block of time, and then there's no place to do literacy if you don't pack that all up and put it all away. And you think of the woman hours that go into, transitioning between one activity and the next. So I guess I'm a little bit excited about this, but I also feel that our Winthrop colleagues are some of our lifelong friends, and it's going gonna be exciting to see how we can work together.
Could somebody address the fact that you're going to be dealing with approximately double the student population size? I know a lot of parents, I hear a lot from a lot of different people about the special relationship that develops in a small school environment versus what would it be, maybe a 700-person school, 700-student school with one school. Versus, what's the 360 or something like that here now.
I think it starts.
How does that? How are you going to keep that connection with the students when you have double the student population?
Well, I think it goes back to what Maureen said. We have an amazing staff of teachers, and those children that are in front of them, they will take care of those children, just as whether it's the first grade classroom or fifth grade classroom. Those classroom teachers and all the support, and then as it grows as a grade level, so you have your classroom, you have your grade level, and then you have your school. And I think if Sheila and I can definitely say we both spend a great deal of time with our children, we can name us children, we know their names, we know something about most of our children, and that whole field will be the same in a larger space. But I think we all got into education for the love of children, and I don't think anybody will let that change at all, no matter what the space is of the building.
So, kind of on that same point, you don't see any challenges with doubling the student population in a single building?
I think in education there are many challenges that we face continuously, and we never know what they're going to be. But I think as we work together on those challenges, then we'll make the best, make what we can the best out of those challenges.
Well, even like basic logistical things like pick up and drop off and recess and lunchtime, you don't see any challenges in that?
I think we had not got to the level of that, and that is definitely one of the parking lot pieces. Dr. Blake's not doing his job. That we're aware of, because there's a lot of logistics. Any color, pick a color. There are a lot of logistics we have not nailed down on, but certainly the logistics around drop-off and pickup. What else did we say? I'm sorry. Recess, lunch, transitions for those in classrooms in that space.
I'm just wondering, all things being equal, like 2 schools versus 1 school, what the difference is. Understanding that those space requirements have challenges that need to be met, but having 750 kids in 1 school versus splitting it up. Just the workings of that. Sure.
You're moving a lot of kids.
Yeah, and that, and just the learning curve of throwing everything into that new schedule.
I think that is, it's evolving, those conversations, and I think that's what, we don't have answers to that.
But when we started this process, we also started visiting schools. So we've been in this process for a number of years, and we looked at what's an ideal classroom, what makerspace that currently, what does it look like the building, how would change that. We also looked at different schools that had larger numbers, and we visited them at dismissal. One of them happens to be in Andover, and they have over 600 students. How do they do dismissal? And we've asked them how do they, they've gone to schools with how does recess work. So we're not pioneering this. There's a lot of schools that.
600 is noticeably smaller.
Well, that's the one example that I'm telling you I did see. There are many other schools out there, but I'm saying there are other places that are doing it, so it's not like we're the pioneers and the first ones doing it, so we have other places to ask some of those questions too.
The other piece to try to answer your question a little bit is in the design of the building, there's adequate space to functionally move all of the pieces. Now, we don't know exactly right down to the student the flow of the cafeteria space yet, where the feeding lines will be, for example. But we know that the space is adequate to do that, and that'll be a scheduling piece that we'll be looking at over time. The layout, Sarah, could you grab the board for me that shows the design of the outside of the building? I'm sorry, the next one over. There you go. One of the to speak to your question about pickup and drop-off, the design of this building and the layout is such that there's going to be separate ways for buses and car pickup so that they'll be out of the way. So on this side will be the buses coming in and going around, the bus drop-off, and parent pickup will be here in the front, so that the two will be out of each other's way, essentially. So there'll be adequate space off of Linebrook Road by design to be able to move people in and out at the beginning and end of the day, as an example.
So there's an entrance back here, and then the main entrance.
So I guess one of my larger questions is, we're seeing good results from our current curriculum, and what is the learning curve for, squaring away those logistics in a school that's double the size, so that our kids' education doesn't suffer while we're figuring out the managerial end of working a school that size?
That's a reasonable question, and I think the high level, we've had some conversations. We've got a couple of years till we have to get to the low level, and you're absolutely right. I'm sure those questions are in the minds of educators as well. We just haven't really spent time on that kind of drill down at this point.
And we've also had a lot of parent community input up to this step, and as we get to these details, once again, we'll reach out to young parents like yourself to be able to, what do we see, but and appreciate your input on these things.
What about like a fire drill? How do you get everybody out if you have 700 kids?
Same way we get them out now.
Yeah.
There'll be different exits that they'll be out and rendezvous places away from the building to bring everybody.
One of the concerns is that these buildings aren't ADA compliant. Will obviously the new buildings have more features to actually move students? Can you speak to that a little bit?
So the new facility will have what's the word I'm looking for, universal design, so that things are accessible to everyone. So there'll be all of the necessary required by law safety features and ADA compliance issues will be fully dealt with. It has to be. And in fact, there are special processes that we have to go through, especially in terms of our special education spaces. We had to submit a separate set of plans with our education plan and the design of the building to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed for their approval of the spaces before we could move forward to even get to this phase.
I think the ed plan is really exciting. Where is that available on the school's website? Is that available?
It's on the school district website.
I can't find. I got it through somebody else, but I wasn't able to find it.
I asked to have it put up last week specifically, so it should be there now, because it was in with the school building stuff, all the paperwork. So it should be on the school district website. Yep. So just to finish up your thought, if I may, or your question, there's a lot of pieces that we still have to explore, understanding that the education of our children is still going to continue. The 20 students that are in front of Ms. Gregory today, well, 4 years from now, it'll be different kids, but it's still going to be 20 kids in front of her. Those kinds of things in our curriculum specifically aren't going to change. The space available to us will certainly be much more conducive to what we're doing moving forward. Sir.
It seems to be in the earlier comments from many of you that you were talking about flexibility, the need to have, spaces within spaces, smaller areas where you could, and I'm curious why that isn't possible in any building. If you arrange it properly, and if you have the correct type of furnishings, privacy screens, and other things that are needed to provide those kind of, zones within the space, and why why is it that you necessarily need a new space in order to accommodate? Don't you really just need to better allocate spaces that you have to provide those kind of zones within the classroom, so that you don't have to walk down the hallway? You have a space within whether it's a fully enclosed space, a small space for privacy, or all you need is visual privacy that can be accomplished with movable screens and partitions, furnishings.
I think that's a good question. I do think that the current rooms have the space to make those spaces. To have a teacher be able to be teaching a lesson and then have other things going on at the same time, it's like if you were trying to watch TV in your room and somebody doing homework, at a table right close to the TV. Some people can function with that background noise. I cannot. But I think that the spaces are just too small for that. Do other people want to add on?
It's more like the sound and the distractions, that you need an area close to the classroom, but not necessarily in the classroom, for those students who have a difficult time focusing, or just the noise of the classroom distracts them from their work. Something just close by, but not necessarily in the classroom.
Well, let me give you a scenario. What if you took 3 typical classrooms on any side of this hallway, and you took out the middle classroom, and you divided that up in a way that provided some small private spaces for the adjoining classrooms, so that they had those areas that you're talking about. You wouldn't necessarily need to take everything apart. You just need to creatively rearrange some of the spaces within a building, any building, this one we've got, and provide the type of areas that you're talking about closer to the classrooms, closer to the spaces you're learning. And maybe it's also a matter of adding some additional space to those classrooms in the process.
Right now, we have classes in every single room, so there isn't the space to break it. That's a great idea, but right now we have, as Sheila said, the school psychologist is in with the ceramic kiln. So there isn't an extra room that could be separated and be kind of the flex space between classrooms. Right now, we have every single room full. I don't know.
I understand that. And clearly, we need more space. We need a larger assembly space in this building. We need probably more individual special ed in other rooms, which could be added to the overall building. What I'm saying is, what I heard, a lot of your concerns is that you didn't have the flexibility within the spaces that you're teaching in. And I believe that that can be accomplished within this building with some creative space planning and furnishings.
So thank you for your comments, and I think that that's a parking lot piece. And I want to speak to the staff. Of course, we all went to education school. We didn't go to how to best design a space school. And we are. I would say that teachers every year ask for different kinds of furniture or different kinds of to try to optimize the best, and it's a continuum, right? We have to keep trying, no matter what happens. We have to keep trying, and I think that to your point, we don't have the answers to those questions. We just know that it's a need that we can't seem to solve.
As a parent with kids in school, I think that's exactly what you are doing right now, is making it work within the space that you have. That's what Maureen was saying is, yes, we're complaining about all these things, but our teachers at both schools are still doing an amazing job, and it's because you're being creative about the space, and it's because you're finding a way to make it work so that the special ed kids get what they need and that the general ed kids get what they need, but it's still not optimum, and our kids aren't getting as much as they could possibly be getting out of their education if they had the space, or if like the nurse's bathroom was actually compliant for a wheelchair, or to be able to meet the needs of a handicapped student. Like we're not there. We're not in this. We're in this age of like cutting edge technology, and we're not giving that to the youngest members of our society.
And to the other point, as we toured the building today, the spaces looked rather large, but I have substituted in both Doyle and Winthrop, and when you fill those classrooms with children, it suddenly feels claustrophobic in there, because they don't just sit still like a book does. they move and they're active and, you know, they want to be engaged with each other. And so if one were to be allowed to come and visit the school when it was occupied, you would have a better picture of that, I think. I don't know if the teachers agree with that or not.
I think it's always our goal to get a better optimized space, and so I hear that. It doesn't matter what space we're in, we're trying to optimize that space. We maybe don't always know how to do that or have the resources for the kind of furniture that it takes, but to your point, we got that on the parking lot. Yeah.
Pepper White's my name. I've been reticent to play the nuclear card from my personal life. My dear wife passed away 2 years and a week ago, Elizabeth Ross White, and she loved both Winthrop, loved both Donna. She subbed at the two schools, and as he had, everybody loved her. And I feel that a big part of keeping the existing buildings and modifying them to, you know, reno-add is the buzzword for the what you call it, for the MSBA. Renovate and add where you need new space. There's a lot of community memory in these buildings. Doyon has it's dedicated to a man who was 19 years old, was a total hero in Vietnam. Misguided war. We all saw the Ken Burns special. There's the bricks around the peace thing there at Doyon. There, I can name 3 people, including Elizabeth, who tragically died young. And you just taking that and saying, we don't care about that. We want the best building, the best state-of-the-art, quote unquote, building. And to heck with the town memory, the people who built the playground back there. Come on. That's all I have to say.
So I think that we kind of covered the scope of what our educators wanted to say. And if you have any lingering questions, if you wouldn't mind putting them up, we will try to get back to you. We appreciate you coming out. Everybody's night is precious. Thanks for coming.